Ilara Voss did not cry. That was the first thing people noticed. When Alpha King Aldrich stood in the stone courtyard of the Solstice Summit, surrounded by lords and ladies from every pack in the Northern Territories, and spoke the words that unmade her world, she did not cry. She stood straight, her hands stayed at her sides, her chin did not drop. I reject you, Ilara Voss, as my fated mate. I choose another. 7 words. That was all it took to cut a bond that the moon herself had tied. 7 words in front of 200 witnesses, and then Aldrich turned away from her as though she were a door he had decided not to open. She walked back through the crowd alone. People stepped aside for her. Nobody spoke. That silence was its own kind of cruelty, the kind dressed up as respect. She made it to the small room assigned to Silvercrest delegates before her legs gave out. She sat on the floor with her back against the cold stone wall. Her wolf, the quiet, careful creature that lived inside her chest, went very still, not dead, just turned inward, the way an animal turns toward a wall when it has been hurt somewhere it cannot reach. Ilara pressed her palm flat against the floor. She breathed. She did not cry. The fever came that night and stayed for 3 days. It was what happened when a fated bond broke. Her body grieved what her face would not show. She sweated through 2 sets of sheets. She dreamed of nothing useful. She drank the broth that the pack healer left outside her door, and she slept, and she woke, and she slept again. On the 4th day she got up, washed her face, braided her hair, and packed her bag. She went home to Silvercrest. Everyone knew. She could see it in the way the elders looked just past her shoulder when they greeted her. She could see it in the way the younger girls stopped talking when she walked through a room. She did not blame them. Gossip in a wolf pack traveled faster than weather. She threw herself into work. She had always been good at one thing, and it was not the thing people expected from an Omega-class wolf. It was not strength or speed or dominance in a room. It was language. It was the quiet, precise art of sitting across a table from 2 groups of people who wanted to destroy each other, and finding the 17 words that made them both feel heard enough to stop. She was a treaty mediator. She was the best one Silvercrest had produced in 30 years. She worked, she ate, she slept. She let the weeks pass like water. She was fine. She told herself this every morning, with the same tone she used when presenting terms to hostile packs. Steady, certain, leaving no room for argument. She almost believed it. The letter arrived 6 weeks after the summit. It came on heavy paper, sealed with black wax and a crown pressed into it. Not a wolf crown, something older, the seal of the Lycan kingdom. She read it twice. The Lycan king, Cassian of the old bloodline, required a neutral mediator for a territorial dispute between 2 wolf packs whose borders pressed against his southern edge. The matter was sensitive. The parties were hostile. The mediator required was someone with a clean record, no pack allegiances that touched the dispute, and experience with high conflict negotiations. Her name had been put forward by 3 separate references. The fee was significant. The contract was 6 weeks. She thought about Silvercrest. She thought about the elders looking past her shoulder. She thought about the younger girls going quiet. She wrote back the same afternoon. She said yes. The Lycan kingdom sat in the old part of the world, where the forests grew close and tall, and the stone of the keeps had been placed by hands that nobody living could remember. It was not a warm place, but it was not unkind either. It had a different quality, something settled, like a place that had decided long ago what it was, and had not changed its mind since. Ilara arrived on a gray morning, and was shown to her rooms by a young steward, who asked 3 times if she needed anything, and seemed genuinely concerned each time she said no. She liked it here already. She met King Cassian that afternoon in a long room with maps on every table. She had expected someone loud. Power, in her experience, liked to announce itself. Aldrich had walked into every room as though the room had been waiting for him. Cassian was not like that. He was standing at the far end of the table when she entered, studying a map with the kind of attention most people gave to things that actually mattered to them. He looked up when she came in. He said, "Mediator Voss, thank you for coming." Then he sat down and opened a folder and asked her what she needed to review the case materials. Not what the kingdom needed, Not what the timeline required. What she needed. It was such a small thing. She did not know why it lodged in her chest the way it did. The dispute was more complicated than the letter had suggested. It involved 3 generations of border agreements, 2 sets of overlapping hunting rights, a river that had moved 17 years ago and invalidated half the existing maps, and a debt that one pack elder claimed was owed and the other claimed had been settled in a handshake negotiation that nobody had written down. Nobody had written it down. Ilara spent the first week reading. She barely left her room except for meals and the occasional walk through the keep's eastern courtyard, where the stones were old and the air was quiet, and she could think without the weight of anyone else's expectations pressing on her. Cassian found her there on the 3rd evening. He did not fill the silence with unnecessary words. He stood beside her and looked at the same stretch of old stone she was looking at, and after a long moment he said, "The river moved because of a logging decision uphill. Our decision, we never told the packs below it." She looked at him. "That is why nobody documented the handshake," he said. "They were too angry to put it in writing. It would have meant admitting we caused the problem." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You just gave me the piece I was missing." "I know," he said. "I thought you should have it." He walked back inside. She stood in the courtyard a while longer. Her wolf, for the first time in 6 weeks, lifted its head from the wall and looked around. The 6 weeks became 8. The dispute was moving toward resolution, but slowly. One side kept introducing new material, which required new review, which required more time. Ilara renegotiated her contract without apologizing for it. Cassian signed the new terms the same day she submitted them. She started to learn his patterns. He was in the map room by 6 every morning. He disagreed with her analysis sometimes, and when he did, he was not usually wrong, which was irritating. He ended every working session by asking what she needed for the next day. He drank too much black tea and not enough water, and his steward had clearly been trying to fix this for years without success. He had a habit of appearing wherever she happened to be thinking, not intruding. Just arriving, standing near enough that she was aware of him and far enough that she did not feel crowded. It was a careful kind of nearness. She noticed it the way you notice a change in temperature, not because it announced itself, but because your body registered it before your mind caught up. One night, late in the 7th week, she was still at her desk when he knocked on the open door of her workroom. He was carrying 2 cups of tea, which was either thoughtful or presumptuous, and she had not decided which. He set 1 cup on her desk. He sat in the chair across from her. He said, "I was at the solstice summit." She went still. "I saw what happened," he said, "in the courtyard." He was not looking away from her. "I have thought about it many times since, about the way you stood." She said nothing. "You didn't have to tell me that is not my concern," he said. "I can see that it is not. I only wanted you to know that someone saw it, and that what they saw was not what he intended people to see." He picked up his cup. He meant it as an ending. It looked, from where I was standing, like a beginning. She looked at him for a long moment. "That is a very generous reading," she said. "I am not a generous person," he said. "I am an accurate one." He finished his tea. He said goodnight. He left. She sat at her desk for a long time after that, not working, just sitting in the particular quality of quiet that he seemed to leave behind him. The Inter-Kingdom Summit came in the 10th week. It was a larger gathering, packs and kingdoms from across the region, drawn together by the resolution Ilara had spent months building. It was her work on every table in that hall. She felt the particular, private satisfaction of that. It belonged to her. Aldrich arrived on the 2nd day. She saw him across the hall before he saw her. He was with Serena, a composed, careful woman who moved beside him with the practiced stillness of someone who had learned not to take up too much space. Ilara watched her for a moment and felt something unexpected, not bitterness, something closer to recognition. Aldrich found her before the afternoon session. He asked for a private word. She gave him 5 minutes in a side corridor, because she was a professional, and the summit required courtesy, and she was very good at doing hard things with a level face. He said her name first. Then he said he had made an error. He said the bond had never gone quiet in him, the way he had expected it to. He said Serena was a good woman. He was careful to say this. and she noted the carefulness, but that the bond, the fated pull, it had not left him. He said her name again, like an apology, like an accusation, like a question. She let him finish. Then she said, "You made a public choice. I made peace with it. I am not going to help you unmake it." He opened his mouth. She said, "I wish you well, Aldrich. I mean that honestly, but this conversation is over." She walked back into the summit hall. She found her seat. She opened her notes. Her hands were shaking very slightly under the table where nobody could see them. But she did not go back to him. She did not waver. She had said the thing she needed to say, and she had walked away, and that was that. Her wolf, quiet for so many weeks, turned fully away from the wall. It sat up straight. It looked around at the room. It was done grieving. The summit ended on a Friday. Ilara's contract ended at midnight. She had packed her bag that morning, neatly, the way she always packed. Everything in its place. Nothing left behind. She had confirmed her transport. She had written her final report and left it on the map room table where Cassian would find it. She was in the Keep's library at 11 o'clock because she could not sleep, and because the library was the best room in the building, and she wanted to sit in it one last time. Cassian walked in at 11:15. She was not surprised. He sat in the chair across from her, the same posture he always had, unhurried, like a man who had long ago made his peace with time. He looked at her. He did not say anything for a moment. Then he said, "I do not have a fated bond to offer you." She waited. Lycans do not carry bonds the way wolves do. We do not get the certainty. We do not get the pull. He rested his arms on the table. What I have is simpler than that, and harder. It is a choice, made with full knowledge of who you are, what you are worth, and what you have already survived. He looked at her steadily. "I am asking you to stay, to be my queen, not because the moon decided it, because I am deciding it, and I want you to know the difference." The room was very quiet. Her wolf was completely still, not the stillness of hiding, but the stillness of listening, of paying attention. She said, "I am not easy to rule beside." He said, "I would find it boring otherwise." She looked at the table for a moment. She looked back up at him. She said yes. Not because fate had pointed her here, not because she was tired of being alone, or afraid of going back to Silvercrest with nothing new to show. She said yes because a person had looked at her clearly, at the whole of her, the competent and the injured, and the quietly angry, and the deeply capable, and had decided deliberately, with open eyes, that she was exactly who he wanted beside him. That was different. That was everything. She sent one letter to Silvercrest. It gave her new title. It gave her new address. It asked for nothing, and explained nothing. It needed to do neither. Serena sent her a book 3 weeks later, an annotated collection of old border treaties, with careful notes in the margins in Serena's handwriting. No letter, just the book. Ilara understood it perfectly. She put it on her shelf where she could see it. The coronation was small. Ilara insisted on this. She had spent enough of her life being witnessed at her worst. This was going to be quiet, and real, and fully hers. She stood beside Cassian in the old courtyard of the Lycan keep, the same courtyard where she had walked in the evenings and thought through the hard parts of the dispute, the same stones, the same still air. She did not keep her eyes on the floor. She looked straight ahead. She stood the way she had stood in that other courtyard, all those weeks ago, when Aldrich had turned away from her in front of 200 people. Straight, hands at her sides, chin up. Only this time, it was not survival. This time, it was something else entirely. This time, it was the beginning she had not let herself believe in, until a quiet man in a room full of maps had looked at her and decided, on purpose, to be part of whatever came next. She was done waiting. She was ready for what was hers.